I'm gonna go ahead and call this to order. I think we do have a quorum.
Yes, sir.
But whether we had one or not, I was gonna go ahead and proceed because we have a hearing today. Let's see, we have House Bill 1031 by Representative Evans. And it's a hearing only. And Representative Evans, I know you're here because I just talked to you. If you want to go, I recognize you. If you want to go ahead and proceed, present your bill. We do have a sign-up sheet. Anybody wants to speak on the bill, and we would welcome your comments.
Okay, great, thank you. Thank you so much. Thank you so much, Chairman Parsons, for giving this bill a hearing. I really appreciate it. And thank you so much to the members of the committee for coming today. And I'm here to speak today about House Bill 1031, the Safe Schools Money Act. And we're working off of Substitute Bill LC 364375S. And this bill matches the language of Senate Bill 112 approved by Senator Lindsey Tippins. Many of you know that I'm a passionate advocate for strong public schools here in Georgia and for public dollars to support our public schools and to educate our children. I'm an 18-year volunteer with the Cobb County Public Schools, and I co-founded a nonprofit at my children's high school. So I understand the importance of public-private partnerships and dependencies on corporate foundation money assisting schools. I also want to express my appreciation for Georgia Power. When we need Georgia Power, they are there. This summer in our backyard on my son's birthday dinner, a family birthday dinner, we had a dead limb fall on a power line and catch fire and electrify another tree, and Georgia Power was very responsive. I want to thank Sister Ward and Jamie Hawken. You've been responsive to my questions. I know they don't like this bill, but I thank them for their courtesy and professionalism. House Bill 1031 is designed to help solve a problem here in Georgia. And that problem is, even with fully funding QBE for the past 3 years and giving our certified teachers a well-deserved $3,000 pay raise, and even with the budget we passed yesterday, our schools are underfunded. Effects of past budget cuts continue to linger. Yesterday, I distributed a copy of the article describing a survey of 111 Georgia school superintendents from the summer of 2019. Effects of poverty remain a critical barrier to improving schools. 98% of those surveyed report a serious deficit in transportation funding as an acute issue. Over the past 10 years, this body has significantly reduced the transportation allowance for schools, leaving local school districts to pick up the tabs. Sparsity grants have been funded at 27% of the amount that the formula dictates, resulting in $18 million less funding going to sparse rural districts in fiscal year 2020 alone. And with recent change in federal school lunch funding, they'll put even more pressure on rural schools to keep their doors open. The bottom line is that our schools need to wring the most out of every tax dollar for public education. I know you're probably wondering, where am I going with this? Or not the Education Appropriations Committee, and I am glad to have members of that committee here present, including the chairman. I would argue that another reason that the schools do not have enough money is that the legislature in 2009 passed the Nuclear Financing Act, Senate Bill 31, requiring that schools, along with Georgia Power ratepayers, excluding large corporations, pay a tariff to help finance the building of Vogtle 3 and 4 in advance before they're producing power. And I have an addendum there. I think many of you are familiar with Senate Bill 31 from 2009. It passed by a House vote of 107 to 66. It was not a partisan vote. And there's more details about that bill. So we have that there. You can read that. Yes. So all ratepayers except large corporate customers have been paying this tariff for 9 years, since 2011. This is real money for our public schools. You can see from the printout that I provided, Just as example, DeKalb County pays an average of $664,000, $345,000 a year. Atlanta Public Schools, $532,000, $146 a year. Dade County, $30,000. Chatham County, $271,000. Richmond, $95,000. Lumpkin County, $13,000 a year. Our stretched school budgets deserve relief from this tariff. House Bill 1031 would allow public schools to keep our tax dollars, money that would be paid for front-ending the financing cost of Planet Vogtle 3 and 4 before they provide power, to spend instead on educating students now, to invest in teachers, supplies, school bus drivers, school nurses, whatever a school system chooses. If this bill is passed, the school's portion of money for financing Vogtle will be paid on the back end when Vogtle 3 and 4 complete and providing power, spread out over the useful lives of the plant. Because Georgia schools are struggling with their budgets, and because the Georgia Constitution states that the state is responsible for providing an adequate education for Georgia students, we argue that the state should exempt schools from paying this tariff for these remaining years for Vogtle 3 and 4 up front, and be allowed to pay on the back end over the useful lives of the power plants, as they do with every other electric plant in Georgia. The way the bill is written now, as Senator, and once again, it's a mere copy of Senator Tippett's bill, is according to Public Service Commission Attorney Tom Bond, and he's here if we want to ask him specifically about this, but in a phone conversation, this is my understanding. The Public Service Commission will have the discretion to decide who will pay the school's portion on the back end. They could decide that all ratepayers would pay the remaining school's portion, or they could decide that schools alone would pay that portion. And I also have an amendment prepared if we said we want to make sure it was public schools that paid that portion. I have an amendment prepared for that. But right now, I'd leave it up to the PSC. So, once again, we've been paying this tariff for 9 years, and while Georgia Power has made significant profits off of costly delays, Vogtle 3 and 4 were supposed to be complete by 2017. We were only supposed to pay for 6 years. Georgia Power plans that Vogtle 3 will be active by the end of 2021 and Unit 4 by 2022. But it is true that Public Service Commission staff have doubts about that time frame. We are concerned that there are challenges for meeting that deadline. Every time experts have said there would be delays and costs would go up, they have been right. Making this change does not affect our school budget. Our state budget. I know we've worked so hard to get more money to our schools, and I really appreciate the work that's been done in that regard. But our schools can save and use this money, our public tax dollars, now without the state increasing their allocations within our state budget or decreasing funding from other areas. Making this change does not harm Georgia Power or affect Georgia Power shareholders or delay the building of Vogtle 3 and 4. This is simply a change in accounting. Instead of recovering the school's portion of financing charges in advance, nearly half of which is the company's profit, the school's portion from 2021 through completion would be paid after construction is complete, after the power is finally being generated, and will be spread out over the useful lives of the plants. The Public Service Commission has ruled that costs should be prudently incurred and in the public interest. We argue that it is in the public's interest that schools be provided this relief. It's not prudent for schools to continue to bear the burden of paying in advance. And I think we all know what we're talking about here. I just have an example of a personal bill. We weren't able to fit a school's bill on one sheet of paper, but we all know, if you look on the back side, the Nuclear Construction Cost Recovery Act there is the 1279. And it's my understanding, but this, if we want to ask the Public Service Commission or Georgia Power, it's my understanding if we were to defer it to pay it on the back end, those accrued costs would be wrapped into the current service type bill for public. Okay. So while it's our job to ensure that this work on the power plant is in the best interest of all Georgians, the legislature has a special responsibility to schools, especially in this budget-constrained environment. Some may argue that if this accounting change takes place and schools can keep this money while other ratepayers continue to fund the upfront financing charges, that is unfair to other ratepayers. We argue that schools are unique and deserve this relief for two reasons. The state constitution in Article 8 states the provision of an adequate public education for the citizens shall be a primary obligation of the state of Georgia. Public education shall be free and shall be provided for by taxation. The state is responsible for educating Georgia's children through our taxes. The state is not responsible for financing any other class or ratepayer. And I first learned about this issue when my good friend, Kate McGregor Mosley, who's head of Georgia Interfaith Power and Light, she was upset about this, that she felt like churches shouldn't have to pay this tariff. Liz Coyle of Georgia Watch, many of you know her. You know, she's this is a powerful consumer advocacy group. We would like all individual homeowners to be exempt from paying this tariff. But this bill, we're keeping it narrow in scope and advocating for relief from schools specifically due to the state's obligation to educate our children and fund our public schools. We also argue that this is a double tax. Our hardworking families pay this surcharge and then on their taxes, and then the schools have to turn around and with those same tax dollars, they have to pay the surcharge again to Georgia Power. In addition, Georgia Power is already making an exception for some power users from paying this tariff. They get a pass and don't have to pay this surcharge like schools do. Schools are on the standard firm rate for electric service. Large electrical customers are on a marginal rate, such as time of use and real-time pricing. They do not pay NCCR charge on their bills, nor do they make contribution to capital costs. Large industrial and commercial customers may get a small fraction, 10 to 30% of their electric service on a firm rate, but the rest of their service is on a marginal rate. If a large industrial customer gets 80% of their electric service on a marginal rate, they really don't care about paying the tariff on a small firm rate portion of their bill. It's a huge savings for them, and eventually they'll get the benefit of Plant Vogtle 3 and 4. Georgia schools have been bearing a higher burden than these large companies, and they deserve relief. We also acknowledge that this is not a bill that the school superintendent's lobby has been asking for. We understand that they and some of you don't want to jeopardize relationships with Georgia Power. We acknowledge the good that Georgia Power Foundation does and the commercial taxes of Georgia Power. I would expect that if this bill were to pass with this accounting change, Georgia Power will continue to be a great supporter of schools. We acknowledge the argument that if we pass this bill and schools can keep this tariff money to use up front in our school budgets now, that it may cost more later. What we are concerned about is that schools are fronting the financing costs over a concentrated period of time so that yearly school budgets are much more impacted. This finance charge for Vogtle 3 and 4 has been a much larger hit on an annual budget. Schools are trying to figure out what money can we use this year. The current system is a much bigger hit on the annual budget rather than spread out over 60 years. When the freshmen of 2018 gathered at the Carl Vinson Institute this summer, we talked through what it takes to create a good piece of legislation. We have to ask ourselves, what is the good that's accomplished with this legislation? Who is helped? And who and what is harmed? Because inevitably with any change, someone will be impacted. We argue that the good that will come from this accounting change after 9 years of schools paying up front is that for the last few years, our schools will benefit from a higher and better use of our school tax dollars now in our annual school budgets. Each school system will be able to keep anywhere from $13,000 to $700,000 a year, depending upon their size. Georgia Power and its shareholders, we argue, are not harmed. The shareholder profits are protected. This is an accounting change. We argue headache, no harm. We anticipate you'll hear from Georgia Power that this accounting change might affect the financial or credit rating, that this change is what they expect and it may affect cash flow. We argue that these dollars, and I don't have the total number, but perhaps they can tell us, according to the data I've been able to collect, $5 to $10 million a year. It's minimal overall to Georgia Power. Maybe a headache, but not harm. We anticipate that they will argue that these accounting changes would cost schools more, interest upon interest. We submit that it is up to the Public Service Commission to decide upon completion of the plans about, number one, how much money Georgia Power will get to recover, and number two, rate design. Who pays what parts of it? Will all ratepayers pay or just the schools? And once again, our concern is that schools need this money now. These sums paid over a compressed period of time have a bigger impact on a school budget. They could be managed, spread out over a larger period of time. In conclusion, I ask for your favorable consideration for House Bill 1031, a mirror bill to Senator Tippin's 112, so that our schools can keep money paid for front-ending the finance cost of Vogtle before the units provide power to spend instead on educating students now, to invest in teachers, nurses, school bus drivers, supplies, whatever a school system decides. Our obligation is to maximize our hard-earned tax dollars for the education of Georgia's hardworking families. Thank you.
Thank you for thank you for that very thorough presentation. Do you have a question? If you care to take it,
Yeah.
I have two. I think two. I know one question.
Yeah.
You had said this mirrored legislation that Senator Tippins from Cobb County had, but I think you told me that. Maybe I misunderstood. But I think you told me that when you first had the bill, but now we have a sub. So is there a
Right.
difference?
Well, the first version of the bill had stopped at line. If you want to look at the bill, let's look at the bill.
Okay.
Financing cost. It stopped at shall not be. It's line 26. Shall not be collected from other customers. And it didn't have the part about such financing costs shall instead accrue. So that was a mistake on my part, and so it was pointed out to me that it was not exactly mirroring Senator Tippins' bill, and so and basically, so, some activists like this language because it means that the money couldn't be collected on the back end, and then that meant that shareholders would have had to pay, and but I've been advised that would probably be unconstitutional. That would be a taking, and so anyhow, this bill matches Senator Tippins' bill.
I just want to understand. I mean,
Yep.
It doesn't make any difference to me
Yeah,
whether it does or not.
and
but I
it's
just wanna know
it's
if
the
it is.
same. And then I gave my bill a title: Save School Money Act. Yeah,
Okay.
so that's the only
And
difference.
there was one other thing I want to mention, and that is that we have the room until 10 o'clock. So
Mhm.
we just have the hour, and
Yes, sir.
Representative
Martin.
Martin.
Yes.
I'm going to address you all as representatives. We have chairman.
I know, a lot of chairmen.
Yeah, Mr. Chairman, I'm just glad you'd call on me at all. I appreciate you, Mr. Chairman. Yeah, we've been down here several days in a row. I think our minds do get tired of that. Thank you for coming this morning. We talked briefly about this yesterday. My concern is this. I mean, I get this. This is a populist thing to do. The problem is in government, we do populist things that cost more in the long term. Interest rates now, somebody can point me in a different direction, but the last time I looked, 10-year Treasury notes were somewhere around 1%. Is that still where we're at? Mortgage rates fell down to in the low 2s. They may be back up at 3 now. The money, when this company, Georgia Power is our investor-owned utility, our regulated utility, when they enter into an arrangement to build, they go to the PSC, prudent cost. You understand return, it's return on equity, it's interest. If these costs are not paid, when Senate Bill 31 came up, they accrue and compound. They accrue and compound at the rate of return. I'm not sure what that is, but it's a large side on the upside of 1%. I mean, it's probably closer to 9 or 10%. I'm not sure exactly what the rate of return is. So what it sounds good what you're proposing to us today. And it might cut the school budgets. It might save them some money in 2020 and 2021. But when the plants go online, that money, we're asking two things. You're asking the PSC to bifurcate a rate structure for educational institutions. By the way, some educational institutions may have more schools than in the future. Some may have less. So, how do you say somebody you gave a break today? You're just asking us to create a situation that has never been created before, to create, a rate class among, base rate utility buyers. And you're asking us to do that and knowingly and willingly sit here and put debt on a school, put future cost on future taxpayers at a 9 or 10% rate. I don't see, with due respect to the lady, your bill should be entitled the Cost Schools Money Act, because in the long run you're costing schools more money. Is that not true?
Well, I would argue that it would be good to understand how much money has been paid up front, what the remaining amount for schools would be, and I don't have that full information. And what would that rate be spread out I would like to know,
Well,
it'd be,
and I appreciate the ladies,
Uh-huh.
and I'm not trying to,
Right.
to argue with you.
Uh-huh.
I mean,
Yeah.
I'm a facts-based fella.
Right.
As Tom McCall said, I'm a simple guy from North Fulton, but numbers are. It doesn't matter how long you take, how long you pay it over time. The fact is, it will cost more money to the schools. I mean, you can go in and buy a car, and they can tell you. Most of the times in the old days, they ask you how much you wanted to pay. I want to know how much the car costs. So if schools want to know how much this is going to cost, if this bill were to pass, their electricity over time is going to cost them more. Is it not true than it will in the current situation?
Well, I do. I understand your point, and that is, I think it is true that the costs would occur, but I am not positive that the way the bill is written now, that schools would specifically, if that remaining amount would cost more. I think I would like for us to do a deep dive on the numbers to fully understand that, because I do understand, with the whole thing with upfront financing the cost of the plant is that it makes that scheme costs. I have a the costs or the savings are not as great the longer it takes for us to bill up front. But I would argue, I would concede that you're right, that it is interest cost upon interest cost. But the other thing about this, the way the bill is written now, is it's my understanding that the Public Service Commission makes that decision about if it's all ratepayers or just schools paying that portion on the back end.
Okay, so you want us to take save schools tax dollars now, so that down the road your hope is the Public Service Commission will then charge the taxpayers more money to pay for the money the schools didn't pay.
I'm not saying I'm hoping that.
Well,
I'm saying it's up. They could have it where the schools pay it only, or
I understand. And again, I'm not trying. I want to try to find a point on which we agree here. If this bill passes, there will be more costs to the schools in the future. Is that not true? There will be more accrued costs unless somebody decides somebody else is magically going to pay for it.
right? Okay, over a 60-year period. That is. Over the useful life of the plant.
And the longer the period, the more interest they'll pay. Isn't that true?
Well,
A
that's
30-year mortgage, you pay more than a 15.
that's true.
You have a great populist, idea here. The whole reason for Senate Bill 31 was that you pay financing as you go on a long-term project like this, so you do not compound interest. For if you do, it will cost you more. It's just, and people, one time I used this brief analogy, people say, well, why should they earn interest while they're building their building? If I'm building a donut shop, I don't. The reason is because when you get your donut shop built, the state doesn't tell you how much you can charge for your donuts. We limit what an investor-owned utility can make. Again, you have a great populist situation here, but you and I want us to agree on this, because I've been around this for a minute, and there will be more cost if it is not paid today incurred by someone. Is that not true?
I think I would say that's true. I would say the schools have been paying up front for 9 years. We have, 2 to a few more years left. So I would say it's a minimum, that they have paid a lot of it up front. But yeah.
Let me just two more, please.
One more point.
Okay,
we have to move on.
Well, I understand. But I think it's important to get to the basis of what the ladies' proposition does. The schools have not been paying any cap cost up front. They have been paying interest on that cap cost, just like everybody else in the state. Had they not been doing that, they would be paying interest on interest. If we stop them doing that, they're going to accrue interest on interest. And I just want to get the lady to it will cost somebody more if this bill were to pass. Is that not true?
It would.
Someone more.
It would, yes.
Okay, so the higher cost.
All right. And I would like to just point out that this body did pass Senate Bill 355 in 2018, the sunset prepayment of future nuclear power plants. This body made the decision that we would not ever finance a nuclear power plant with the prepayment. So this type of front-loading the costs of prepaying the investor profits, this cannot be done again. And I would also point out that this original bill did exempt schools from paying this tariff, but that was removed in the final version. And legislators passed this Senate Bill 355 so that no other power plant could be built with this funding scheme again.
You have a question from Representative Chairman Werkheiser.
Thank you. And I just two real quick, and I won't belabor the point because my mind was going the same place his was, and that there is no. It's a zero-sum game. So any if we don't pay it now, you're going to pay later. The other thing, just out of curiosity, where is Tippin's bill in the process?
I think it's like tabled in a committee.
Okay, all right. We'll go on because I won't belabor the other point.
Representative Chairman Dickey, you have a question?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and I certainly do appreciate Chairman Martin. He can really cut through the chase and do it, and I'm like Chairman Werkheiser, that was, he stated it much better than I could, and I appreciate my friend Representative Evans bringing this. We've talked about this several times, and I do know your passion for education, and I know you really wanted to get more money for education for our K through 12. That I work very passionately hard, and I've tried to share some things. And we had a budget yesterday on the House floor.
Yes.
For education. It was
Yes.
44.7% of our total budget was for education, $10 billion. But yet, you did not vote for it.
I voted for the
You
budget.
voted for the budget.
I voted for the budget.
I apologize.
And there's a big
I
reason
misread.
of it was the education. Yeah.
Well, great. Well, thank you. Well, good. I understand. I apologize. I just looked on my phone and I misread it. So thank you for that support.
Of course.
Of education
Of
for
course.
our children.
Yes.
Thank you. That's all.
Thank you. I think we have Chairman Fleming. Are you here?
Good morning.
Good morning.
I apologize. I had another place I had to be, and I got late here, so I may have missed your opening comments.
That's all right. That's right.
Of course, I'm from the Augusta area, along with a couple other members of this committee, and that Plant Vogel is in our backyard.
Yes.
And it is a huge employer in our area.
Yes.
And a valuable asset to the community. I feel, and I think most of us.
This is not an anti-plant Vogel bill.
Are you in favor of nuclear power?
I'm not. I haven't been excited about the building of Plant Vogel. When it's complete, and it's providing carbon-free power, I'll be excited about that.
Let me ask you this. I'm trying to understand your rationale here.
Mhm.
Would you be opposed to an amendment to your bill to add public hospitals as an exemption?
Yes.
You would be opposed to that?
Yes.
Why wouldn't a public hospital that treats people, why wouldn't we need to help them this way too?
The purpose of this is for our schools, for public education. And one of my arguments was in Article 8, the Constitution. It states that the state shall supply, adequate public education for Georgia's children.
Our Constitution also allows us to expend public funds on people who are in need of
Right.
health care.
Well, the bill that I'm proposing just limits this. It's a very targeted bill. It's only talking about public schools.
Why would you be opposed to helping public hospitals?
I'm not opposed to helping public hospitals, but that's not the focus of this bill.
What about the Georgia War Veterans Nursing Home in Augusta that is supported by the budget we just passed and you voted for yesterday? Would you be in favor of exempting them from this?
No.
I'm trying to find the reason why you want to do this for the school system, but not other entities such as public
Okay,
hospitals
and that was a
nursing
part
homes.
of what my earlier remarks. I'm a passionate advocate for our public schools, for ensuring that that they have maximum use of our tax dollars, and that is the primary focus of this bill. Yeah.
So I'm also trying to figure out, where do we stop? If we do this for public school system, why don't we consider the Georgia War Veterans Nursing Home in Augusta? Why don't we consider?
Does the
public
Article 8 of the Constitution state that we shall adequately fund that institution?
You're from DeKalb County, correct?
Yes, sir.
Has DeKalb County maxed out their millage rate for their ability to raise taxes for public education?
I do not know that. Yeah.
I don't think they have. And my point to you would be that your county has the ability to raise more money for education if they really need it. And that's where I would encourage you to advocate if there's not sufficient money for public education in DeKalb County, that rather than go down this slippery slope that I find illogical, lobby your school board to raise the taxes and the millage rate if you desperately need this more money, because I'm sure they want enough money there to properly educate their kids in the public school system, and I know you do too.
And I think, yeah, okay. Leave it at that.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
All right, thank you. We have a question from Representative Jones.
Chairman.
That'll be the last question, then we'll go into, we have some people that want to speak, but yes, please
Okay.
ask your
My
question.
good friend, Representative Fleming, are you trying to help her pass that bill, or are you trying to keep? And I was going to ask him, ask Representative Evans, who is from the cabin. Obviously, I'm from the cabin. Would you be okay if Representative Fleming joined in with you in exempting all those others, including hospitals, those public entities? Would you be opposed to that?
This bill is focused on the schools.
Okay, so you would be opposed to that then?
Yes.
Okay, then. Well, I think what he's saying about a slippery slope. Where do you stop? Where do you start? Well, you know where you want to start, but I understand what you're trying to do, and I applaud what you're trying to do. Did you even think about maybe a reduction, not being completely exempt, but maybe a portion?
I would be open to that, but this is right now we're talking about them not paying the last few years. Yeah.
Yes, ma'am. Okay, thank you so much.
Okay. We have, thank you. We have some people want to speak on the bill. Liz Coyle, Georgia Watch.
Good morning, Mr. Chairman, members of the committee. I'm Liz Coyle, speaking on behalf of Georgia Watch. We're a statewide consumer advocacy organization, and I think probably most or all of you know that Georgia Watch has been weighing in on issues related to recovery of costs related to Plant Vogtle 3 and 4 since before this body approved legislation that allowed the collection of this nuclear cost construction recovery tariff while the units were being constructed. As a reminder, that was a change. Prior to the passage of SB 31, the utility would put upfront the money. They would pay to build the units. When the units were providing useful power, they would seek approval from the commission to collect the capital and financing costs. I'm grateful to Representative Evans, who, by the way, is a hard act to follow, for introducing House Bill 1031 to save schools money. But as you know, Georgia Watch has been advocating to save ratepayers money on their power bills. Chairman Martin and I have been debating since at least 2013 when Representative Jeff Chapman introduced legislation he called No Profits on Cost Overruns. And of course, the units were supposed to be complete in 2016 and 2017, at which point the tariff would no longer be on people's bills as a separate line item. They would go into rates, and there would be a cost, as there is on every other power plant in the state of Georgia, for those financing costs. According to experts who monitor the project for the Georgia Public Service Commission, who testify every 6 months on the progress of constructing these units, for the delay period through 2022, that's the current forecast date that 3 and 4 will be operational, ratepayers will pay an additional $1.8 billion in NCCR revenue requirement during construction due to delays and cost overruns. Those same experts have testified that Georgia Power shareholders will earn an extra $5 billion in profit. Have you ever heard of a business making more money by being late and over budget? I don't think so. So we are very much in support of Representative Evans' bill, House Bill 1031. We wish that you would schedule a vote it out at committee before crossover day, and get it over to the Senate to consider along with Senator Tippin's bill. Thank you for the opportunity to speak to the bill.
You have a question if you care to take it.
Absolutely.
Representative Williamson. you have a
Oh,
question?
yes, thank you for your testimony, but do you disagree with Chairman Martin's logic about it? It would in fact cost the schools and other ratepayers more money if we enacted this legislation?
I do not disagree with that logic. And again, this is the way monopoly utilities in the state of Georgia have collected the revenue from ratepayers. They build the projects up front, and because of the passage of the Sunset Bill from Senator Huffstetler in 2018, that will be the case going forward. A lot of folks would rather have, and you know, we really speak up for the residential ratepayers.
Right.
It's one of the reasons we support this bill, because they're basically double taxed. They're paying their own nuclear tariff, and then on their property tax, they're paying the school's nuclear tariff. Most people would rather have, because it's concentrated in this period of time, it adds up to real money, particularly for the schools. That money could be used to pay off much higher interest credit card debt, for example, rather than paying in advance for these units. If the units supposedly will be around for 60 years when and if they begin providing power, and that financing cost would be amortized over those 60 years. So the actual impact on the household budget, that's what people care about, that would be lessened.
Well, sort of follow-up question, if you don't mind, and it's sort of in the same vein as Representative Fleming asked. Does Georgia Watch support nuclear reactors in North America?
Georgia Watch has not taken a position on the source of generation. We have been concerned that it would be the most costly form of generation, and that ratepayers are going to be paying significantly more because these units are being built and did not have an appropriate cost cap. So we have consistently, we're there in those hearings that occur every 6 months. We're heading now into the 22nd Vogtle construction monitoring period, and we will continue to ask the Georgia Public Service Commission to protect ratepayers by setting a cost cap that they will allow the company to recover. When Westinghouse went bankrupt a couple years ago, as you all will remember, there was a real decision point. In South Carolina, the decision was not to complete the 2 units up there. Here, the decision was to continue. The SEC has opened an investigation into whether or not SCANA executives were misleading the public and their elected officials, including the Public Service Commission. We're not having that here in Georgia, but what we did have in Georgia was an opportunity for the Public Service Commission to say, yes, you may go forward with constructing Vogtle 3 and 4, but because Vogelhouse went bankrupt and Southern Nuclear is building them without a fixed price contract, there's basically a blank check for Georgia Power. That's what we're concerned about. If the units are, when the units are complete, if the Public Service Commission will have the opportunity to disallow some of those costs, and we will continue to show up and ask them to do that very thing.
Thank you for your testimony.
Thank you. Thank you for the question. Chairman Martin, can you?
I can be brief.
You can be very brief.
I'm gonna pull one of those.
We don't have much time.
I'm gonna pull one of those debate things, Mr. Chairman. She
Hold
mentioned my name.
Hold
Can
on
I?
Hold on a second. I just want, our time is, going by pretty quickly, and we want to make sure that we do give Georgia Power, who signed up to speak, we want to make sure that they have time to talk about this bill that's very important to them too. So, but go ahead.
But, Ms. Coyle, I thank you, and I don't mind you mentioning my name at all. You're a pleasure to work with. We don't exactly see eye to eye on everything, but we work together toward the end good. And I am one of those residential ratepayers. I do have pause with this because I think it adds cost, but I will agree with you on this. When that plant was originally set to go in motion, and be amortized over 60 years, and it's taken a few years longer than that, I think it's perfectly fine for interested groups, and Georgia Power should expect that when they put it online, that somewhere at the end of that, as it's depreciated out, they may stop earning for the last few years, because it was a 10-year build and a 60-year run. That's 70 years. We don't want to turn that into 75, 78, 80. Now, Georgia Power may not like to hear that from me, but I think that's a fair thing, and I hear you when you talk about that. I do think, with respect to my friends in South Carolina, they made a mistake because those folks up there are paying a capital cost on those plants that are never going to generate electricity. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Chairman Martin.
Thank you. We have, Robert, I'm not sure how to pronounce Robert.
Sirfoss.
Okay, Servos, you recognize. If you can keep your comments brief because we are running out. We have to be out of the room at a certain time, and I just want to make sure that everybody gets a chance to speak.
Yes, Mr. Chairman, I plan to be brief. I'm Robert Searfoss. I'm a citizen of Georgia and a school-supporting taxpayer. I got started in this when I looked at my bill and realized I was paying now for some supposed benefits far into the future. I'm elderly. I thought I might be dead before I could get the supposed benefits of this thing. So that's how I started thinking about this. Then I realized that my school tax money was also being paid up front to build this private project. And so I started studying it. And my question is, or my statement is, it's likely that most everybody on this committee today were not in that legislature in 2009 when the bill that let Georgia Power and Southern Company take construction money in advance from schools to build that Plant Vogtle. And my question is, would anybody on this committee today vote to repeat that earlier bill? Most likely not. Some say the Vogtle bill was about the fastest bill ever passed in Georgia, and that my thinking is that the speed of that bill is probably why the mistake of burdening schools with the surcharge was made in the first place. Making schools pay their scarce tax money to finance a private project of a huge corporation was, I think, a mistake. I think it was an oversight. I think it was made years ago by others who were in a hurry, and it's something that needs correcting now. This committee can make a good start on relief for schools today by passing 1031 onto the rules and to the House for further and greater consideration. Not only is scarce school money taken, it has been going on years longer than earlier legislation imagined. A finished plant with no more surcharges was presented back then and was expected. That has not happened, and the surcharges go on and on and on. Who wants schools to keep redirecting scarce tax money to a blank check? 1031 will correct this problem this year and save needed millions for schools. Now, this school money bill will solve the unfortunate and somewhat embarrassing problem of using local school tax money to finance a private power plant. It will do it by adjusting the flow of money and the timing of that money to the power company. The power company has a whole fleet of accountants, and the power company will figure it out, and the power company will survive. It will get its money, just not now from our hard-pressed schools. Yes, it's true. Someone will pay a bit more, and that point was made today. Someone will pay a bit more later. It's the Public Service Commission's job of sorting all that out. Schools should have never paid a dime to finance a private project. Schools are special in the state constitution, and school tax money is for schools. Thank you very much.
Thank you for your presentation. I do want to mention to you, sir, that I was actually the chair of this committee when that legislation
That's
passed.
fine. I said most.
Okay. There are at least three that I see, maybe four, that were on the committee at that time. It wasn't rushed, actually. It came through, it was a Senate bill that came through a process in the Senate, including subcommittees, I recall. I do know it came through the proper procedures over there. When it came to this committee, we had, it came through a subcommittee. It didn't even bring it straight to committee. It wasn't rushed. I think that's just a common term that people use, referring to legislation and things that pass here. We don't rush bills, and I think, and to your comments, I think that there were questions maybe that I should have asked that I didn't ask because I didn't know, but we didn't rush the bill, and I can't blame anybody. Can't blame Georgia Power, or anybody in the Senate, anybody that carried the bill, anybody on the committee. Sometimes you don't know the questions to ask, but I think that overall it's a good thing that we did it that way. Don't think we'll ever do it again, but I think that it will be tremendous savings in the end. You talked about who pays. It'll be tremendous savings to the people in the end who do pay bills. But thank you for your presentation.
Thank you. I stand corrected on those points, but I would also comment that had you thought this through a little bit more, you might have exempted schools at that time.
Thank you. Jamie Hawkins, Georgia Power.
We've got a few people, so I'm going to bring us all up. If
Okay.
that's okay, Mr.
We have
Chairman,
we still have about
expedite.
15 minutes.
We'll
so.
be quick. So
Okay.
Thanks, Mr. Chairman, members of the committee. My name is Jamie Hawken. I'm the Director of Legislative Affairs for Georgia Power. I have with me today, because we've gone through this process on a number of occasions over a number of years, Tyler Cook, who's our Director of Finance. We get a lot of questions around our financing on this issue. And then also Larry Legg, who is the Director of our Pricing and Rates. So we talk a lot about rates. So I think it goes without saying, I think y'all understand we oppose House Bill 1031. And I think we've talked about what the bill does. Obviously, it exempts schools from their nuclear construction cost recovery. And I think we've talked a lot this morning around where those costs go and what happens as far as those costs. So I'm not going to harp on that. I will remind everybody, and I think the position that this body took on Senate Bill 31 is important to note that one of the true benefits associated with Senate Bill 31 was the assurances it created in the credit markets. Okay, we are a capital-intensive business. Our cost of capital is extremely important as we undertake investments in our infrastructure, whether it's distribution projects, transmission projects, or constructing a nuclear facility. And so by giving those assurances, we ensured that our capital structure stayed at a very competitive rate, which was to the benefit of all of our ratepayers in any project that we would undertake. I think a couple other things that we've heard. All of our customers are allocated NCCR based on the customer or based on the rate plan in which they are under. And so obviously from our perspective, we feel like it is bad policy to exempt one class of customer who ultimately is going to get the benefit of that asset when the asset comes online. And so the other part of this is, with schools, and I appreciate Representative Evans' passion around education. I think if you've been around our company long enough, you would understand we have a strong passion for education here in the state. And so one of the things that's unique around schools is we've constructed low-cost rates specifically for them because of the unique loads that they present. The other thing is we've talked a lot about taxes. Georgia Power pays over $100 million in school taxes annually here in the state. And then just to further show our commitment to education, one of the things, look, we spend millions of dollars on education initiatives across this state. And the other part is we have employees that are going into classrooms. We've been to 85% of the school districts here in Georgia teaching STEM-based initiatives to kids in K through 12. And so education is clearly important to us and a part of who we are. And so with that, I do want to talk. We've talked a little bit about finance and some things. I'm going to turn it over to Tyler, who's going to talk a little bit about financing. Okay.
Okay, I'll be brief. So I want to reiterate the importance of how we finance our business and the benefit it provides to customers. So in my financial role, what I do is determine the optimal mix of capital that we use to finance our construction costs to minimize cost to customers. And we use that with a mix of debt from bondholders and equity from shareholders, all of whom expect a fair and reasonable return on their investments. Those fair and reasonable returns are costs to Georgia Power and to our customers. Today, the financing costs for Vogtle 3 and 4 are earning returns. We're recovering those costs at rates that are below our allowed cost of capital that we earn on the rest of our business. So I think about access to capital markets. And access to capital markets, my role is to guarantee that we have access to capital markets to provide clean, safe, reliable, and affordable power to our customers. These fair and reasonable returns that we give to our debt holders and our shareholders are what allow us to continue to access these capital markets. If you look at what's going on today with the coronavirus and with COVID, there is a spread of about 200 basis points, 2%, between high investment grade companies and low investment grade companies. Something like this, a carve out for customers, would be viewed negatively by the investment community and by the rating agencies, which would impact the financial health and the financial integrity of our company.
And then Larry, just touch on rates for a second. We've heard about certain classes of customers that don't have an NCCR allocation, so if you could touch on that.
Sure. Just wanted to mention real quickly, as Mr. Hawkins said, all customers do receive NCCR as part of their tariff. You can actually see online the tariffs that have the NCCR clause in there. Regarding the discussion around real-time pricing that was mentioned earlier, all of those customers also receive a portion of their bill. They're charged a portion of their bill on NCCR. And schools are eligible for the real-time pricing rates. That was characterized as just being for industrial customers. It's not. Real-time pricing is a tariff that allows customers to have some of their energy at a standard embedded rate and some at the marginal cost. That's important for economic development for the state. We actually have used that successfully to attract a lot of customers because the marginal cost is applied to new load they bring to the state. Schools are eligible for that rate as well. In fact, we have 238 customers that are schools that are currently on the real-time pricing rate. To qualify for that, it's just you qualify by size, not by the type of customer you are. So it's important to note those schools get the same treatment as any other commercial or industrial customer would get on the real-time pricing. And in fact, schools make up less than 0.1% of our commercial customers, but they make up about 10% of the real-time pricing customers we have. So they actually, relative to their customer base, they are overrepresented in real-time pricing and take advantage of that same treatment.
Thank you. Representative Williams, you have a question?
Yeah, just real quick to the lady. I know the state of Georgia, we zealously protect our bond rating with the full knowledge that if we don't have the triple across the board top of the scale bond ratings, that it's going to cost the average citizen in Georgia more money to run state government.
Right.
Would you say that's a fair illustration of what you're trying to do, to put it in terms that many people in this room, maybe the people who are watching, might better understand that just as this body zealously protects our bond ratings, you're doing the same thing for the benefit of Georgia Power customers?
That's exactly right. That's exactly right. And so when I talked about the impact that the virus is having today on today's markets, that's that spread, that difference. That's what a strong investment grade company, which is what we're trying to protect for our customers, that's the impact of something like that happening, is that we pay less in interest rates, saving customers money because those costs are passed through to our customers as financing costs by being strong investment grade. So we do everything we can to protect our credit rating.
Thank you. Representative Jones, did you have a question? Okay, very good. Very good. Thank you all very, very much. Oh, you did have something.
was first. Okay.
Okay.
Very quickly. Is it true, and I'm just trying to understand this, I heard this, that when the Senate bill passed and established the rates, the federal government came back later and gave money towards the project?
They did. So we have.
So did you adjust the rates because the money wasn't there prior to the Senate bill being passed? So did you adjust the customer's rate after that money came in?
Yes. So the money that's given that you're talking about is Department of Energy loan guarantees. So these are loans
Yes,
by the
but
federal
did you adjust the
financing
customer's rate?
Yes. So we will save customers $550 million.
Did they get their rates adjusted as they pay now?
Yes. So the rates are adjusted.
And
through
very quickly, what
NCCR.
was Georgia Power's profit margin for 2019?
So our profit margin, so our return on equity,
What was your profit? What was their profit last year?
So
Overall
$1.72 billion of net income was our profit.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Appreciate the presentation. Do you have any closing comments you'd like to give? You got about 2 minutes, I think.
I want to thank this group again for hearing this bill, and I hope, I would love for this bill to move forward. If nothing else, I would like for this is a conversation for everyone to be aware of the costs that the schools are bearing right now. And if Plant Vogel and 3, is supposed to come live November of 21, but if it's delayed, I would ask that this folks consider the impact of that and possibly consider this bill next year as well.
Thank you for the presentation and all who came to speak today. Here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to put this in. I'm going to ask Chairman Martin to be very open-minded, and I'm going to sign it to his subcommittee. I'm going to be perfectly honest with you. I don't expect anything to happen. I don't expect this committee to meet again before now on crossover day. We'll be meeting after that, but it'll be too late for your bill to pass. I did think it was, and I do think it's an important issue, and I appreciate you bringing it. And I wanted to make sure you had the opportunity to present it, have a hearing on it, have questions asked, and have opposing parties to speak on it. If it were, and here again, trying to be just honest as I can, if it were to move through the committee, which I don't think that it probably would at this point, a lot of questions, but if it did, and I'm not the rules chairman, I couldn't, but it would be a very difficult one at this stage to get, because there would be so much discussion and so many questions and so much debate on. So I'm going to assign it to Chairman Martin's subcommittee. I don't expect, I'm going to ask him to have a meeting at some point, be open-minded about it, and I'm sure his committee members are. But I appreciate the presentation and all who spoke, all the good questions. But don't expect it to move. I'm not going to do anything to move it any further this session. But thank you very much for your presentation. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.